Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon to all of the people joining us from the UAE and beyond. And today we are very, very fortunate and privileged to have some excellent speakers and participants from an expert area, which today is going to be about data modernization. Me as a CEO, I was asking, so what is data modernization? That would be my sort of earliest question. And really, it's about where we are today to where, in terms of where our data is, whether it's on Excel or in a SQL database or whatever, and moving all the way to very sophisticated modernization. That journey is really what we're going to be talking about today. We have Lawrence from Microsoft, we have Christoph, and we have Frank Winkler, who is joining us from Crayon. And they are, all of them, subject matter experts, different types of experiences and different backgrounds. And I think and that mix of skills and background is going to be really quite important. This is going to be a very free-flowing session. The first 15 minutes, we are going to be setting the tone. Each of the speakers will put about 5 minutes worth of context, and then we roll out into the Q&A and make it as active as possible. There will be lots of use cases that we will apply, some regional, some global, and because that sort of starts making it very real for us. Now, with your permission, I'll just put a slide, a couple of slides up there, and so here we are. So today's presentation, why is data modernization so important, and the migration to the cloud, and we'll engage in this conversation throughout this session. And the core driver, and this session is very focused on what we call the small, medium businesses, and they are literally from a 1 million to about $300 million worth of business. So there are some very significant players in there. A lot of them need to go through that transition and that migration process and that modernization process. That's what we will discuss. 26% faster time to market because of cloud and utilizing the various things that we have, and greater than 99% in terms of service level agreements. Now, in my research, I came across this very nice report from Deloitte Insight. And the key elements that I picked up for me, again, I'm seeing this from a business, from a user perspective, as a CEO of a mid-sized company. That's how I see it. Now, is data modernization driving cloud or vice versa? Is the cloud both a means to and a consequence of data modernization? And are they reinforcing each other? And do we need to embrace both those trends? And then 55% see data modernization as a key component of or a reason for cloud migration. It's second only to security. So these are some key data points that I'd like to start with. Another one was drivers for one-time data modernization: security, strategy, tools, and talent. And I think this is something that we will certainly ask both Lawrence and Frank to comment on. Another data point is, what are the big obstacles to implementation in terms of data modernization? Budget was being mentioned, but frankly, it should be the other way around. I think we would save more money than spend money. Lack of understanding is probably, in my opinion, would have been the highest figure. Lack of consensus amongst decision makers, absence of clarity, and others. So these are some interesting points to come forward. Now, in terms of modernization, the industry that has taken the lead substantially is the financial services sector, and they are leading, and the others that are closely following are the life sciences and the energy sectors. So this is something perhaps we will discuss today. Key questions to ask, purpose, why are we doing this? Tactical versus cultural in terms of the organization. What are the ideal scenarios, and what are the strategies going forward? And as we look into it in greater depth, we will end up with a series of questions. So this is just a little bit of a background to start the conversation with. And so with that, I would like to hand over to Lawrence to give us a 5-minute contextual understanding of what data modernization is from his perspective and how he engages with his clients. Lawrence, over to you. Please introduce yourself. I think you're the best one to introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Tariq. Okay, so as Tariq has mentioned, my name is Lawrence Modoga, and I look after Microsoft's open source business in the cloud. I'll touch a bit on that as we move along, but in the meantime, I'm also looking after our data modernization business. And I'm honored to be here with you today, and I'm happy to take you through a bit of how Microsoft looks at data modernization. What is it? Why is it important, and why is now the best time to modernize? This will take about 5 minutes. And of course, if you have any questions, we'll definitely take them. Okay, so let's jump in, right? The last 2 years, honestly, have been some of the most interesting years for technology, but some of the hardest years for humanity. Let's be very honest, we've had to change, not only as individuals, but also as organizations. We've had to be open to remote work. And I'd say a conference like this is a direct consequence of that. I'm joining you from Kenya. Some people are joining from Dubai, and you are everywhere across Middle East and Africa. So, yeah. Number two is that we decided to take employee and customer safety to the next level. And this was true across businesses that required meetings in person, turning them virtual, but also ensuring that customers felt safe wherever they went. That was 2020. However, 2021 brought in a new question, which was what happens next? Where do we go from here? And the most important thing was one was recovering. If you had business strategies that had slowed down or stalled, you needed to adapt and change and grow and go to the next level. But number two was our customers had changed. And this was true not just for large tech companies like us, but also for small businesses as well. Customers expected more of a digital experience. If they could use an app, it would be better because that means they can go along with their day to day lives and actually still engage with you as a business. And then also, we saw a huge adoption of emerging technologies. In fact, one of my colleagues mentioned that the last 2 years have done for technology what it took 10 years to do for the cloud. It has been a really, really massive shift across the board. And this can be this we can put this into actual numbers, right? We can see the rising spend in IT. We can see the fact that more and more end users are willing to spend on technology. And for me, the important question here today is how does that impact you as a business? So in the data space, or rather, let's actually talk about an organization. An organization, and this is a gross oversimplification, can be divided into people, products, and processes. And the most important part of these is the data flow between them. Each of them is important. The products that you sell to your customers, the processes that make it possible for you to run your business, and most importantly, the people, you, me, who go into work every day to ensure that the business runs and that we are able to deliver that value to our customers. And so data is a key part of that, from communication to management, from analysis to forecasting, to ensuring that we know where the business is and how it's working and everything that we do there and beyond. And so when it comes to data, especially if you're looking to modernize and grow, we look at it in two key ways. Number one is you can look at migrating your current data estate, the technologies that you're running internally to handle the people, products, and processes. You can move that to the cloud directly. That is migration. But today we talk a bit about modernization, which means actually updating and taking your existing infrastructure and completely changing it, taking it to the next level. And as a business decision maker, there are some decisions you need to make. Number one, of course, is how does this affect my cost? How does this affect, am I moving from a CapEx model to an OpEx model, right? Number two is complexity. Do you have the resources internally to make this move? Do you have the skill level? How well trained are your staff to actually go in and make this happen? And last but not least is, and this I think is usually the most important question, is how does this tie into your business? How do you ensure that your longer term business goals are met by this shift? And so as Tariq very well mentioned, there are quite a number of triggers, from cash flow challenges to innovation to finding better cost optimization to driving faster time to market. And this will be different for every organization. So the real question here is, what does it mean for you? And that's why we're here today, to answer these questions. And before my 5 minutes run out, allow me to put on my open source hat and share a bit about Microsoft and open source. Microsoft traditionally, and for a very, very long time, and open source have always been at loggerheads. And this has changed in the last actually 10 to 15 years, with Microsoft becoming one of the largest contributors to open source. Now, you might be thinking, why is this important? What does this have to do with data modernization? And the thing is, it has a lot to do with it. Why? Because we know most organizations out there are running open source databases. You have your data seated on open source technologies. And I'm happy to share that now Microsoft can support you in your open source journey in case you're looking at open source solutions. And so whether you're looking to migrate, whether you're looking to modernize, or whether you're looking to build new tech to impact and reach your customers better and faster, Microsoft is here for you. And during this session, I'm happy to answer any and all of your questions. Without further ado, allow me to hand it over back to you, Tariq. Thank you, and thank you so much. Quote of the year, Tariq, you're on mute.
I know. I think this is one of the most frequently used phrases in during the Zoom and team times. And you're on mute. So every single call has it. So apologies. Yeah, one of the key things that you had mentioned, that what used to take decades is now happening in months and sometimes in weeks. And this was accelerated due to COVID. And basically, whichever industry you take, all of them are transforming at that rate. So any industry that does not transform at that rate is going to, by definition, get left behind, and potentially it would be an existential threat. A lot of people think, I mean, most managers think linear when the world is moving exponential, and now the last 2 years has demonstrated that. So I think we'll go back into that process. Is how do we get onto that wave, onto that bandwagon of being able to think exponentially and move fast? And I dare say you'll tell us about the modernization in cloud and how together that will enable us. That opens us nicely to move to Frank. Frank, Frank is with Crayon. And the one thing I would like to mention, because I find it fascinating, because I think the future is about taking the more human aspects and the technology aspects and merging them together. Frank is a psychologist converted into a techie. Brilliant. So over to you, Frank.
Thank you.
Tell us how you do the head shrinking of all of the customers.
Okay. Well, thank you, Tariq, and welcome everybody. My name is Frank Winkler, and I work as a senior solution architect at Crayon in our AI Center of Excellence, where I'm helping customers realize the business value from data science and AI analytics. So we help global and local customers to get ahead in their respective markets. And I'm just taking the chance here to tell you a little bit about the latest trends in data platforms. So I hope that you will walk away with a key understanding of, first, how cloud-driven Workbench empowers all your insights and analytics needs. Second of all, how it will drive adoption and data across your organization. And third, and most importantly, that you can actually start delivering this today and scale it out as required. This is the power of the cloud. Now, let's take a look at how you can actually drive value utilizing modern software offerings around the cloud. We're thinking about this in our service offerings as mainly three different parts. The first one being that you first want to optimize your return on investment from existing investments, be this license or consumption cost that you're already incurring in your business, right? We're talking about specifically existing legacy systems. You just want to make sure that they drive the value in the best possible way. Second, you want to utilize the cloud to fast-pace your technology adoption and decrease the management efforts. This gives you access to the latest technologies and with a high reliability, and it reduces your headaches basically down to near zero. And third, you want to unlock the value of your data across your organization using what we call a data platform. And this drives adoption of data across the organizations and business units. It reduces time to insights for everyone working on data, and it caters to all your audiences across your business, as well as tech, with best-in-class solutions, which is always nice. So when we put this journey onto a timeline, we can actually see how well they build up on each other, right? So we first optimize for cloud spend, then we migrate and modernize, then we build up the data layer and the consumption, then we layer it on top of AI to drive that value to the clients and internally, and then we manage services and solutions and productionize them. And this represents our learning from over 70,000 customer engagements globally on how to drive value fast. And the key takeaway here is that we think you should be building up layer of layer with a clear list of use cases that you have in mind. So you can think of this process as a value cycle, in which you basically first optimize existing spend, then you build a technical and process foundation for your business case, then you utilize analytics and AI offerings to derive and deliver that value to your clients internally and externally, and then you package and harden it for your customer deployments onto the market. So let's go deeper into this cloud and data part of the journey to better understand the role of the data platform. Talking about data platform, we're really talking about three things. We're first talking about empowering every user in the organization to access trusted, well-organized, and integrated data to drive insights in their daily business. Second of all, we're talking about automating the collection, storage, and integration of data from basically all corners of your business into a central repository that can be easily indexed and searched to provide everybody with access to that data, reduce silos, and just make it manageable and governed. And third of all, enabling your organization to gain that competitive edge that you're looking for, utilizing the latest in AI and analytics across all of your data. Because it's in one central space, it's trusted, it's well structured, people know that it exists, and they can easily join and merge that to integrate insights basically end-to-end across your complete business flow. And you'll see later when we discuss this around a couple of use cases, that I can also elaborate on if you want to, around how this looks like for customers. So the question now is probably for you, how can I deliver such a project for my organization while keeping the return on investment high and especially not overspending and seeing the return immediately? And of course, that's what a lot of our clients also ask themselves. So we have come up over the years with I think, good three-step process of how to ensure that this really works out. And there's 3 easy steps that you can follow also to move from your current position to an advanced data business. We think that first of all, it's most important that you understand really where you are currently. What do you have, what you don't have, what you need, what you specifically need really, and how to get there. And then second, build the platform that supports you specifically with exactly these requirements. So go away from trying to plan ahead for many years to come, and anticipate what the market is doing. Like we said before, right? 2022, 2021, it was a crazy amount of change. Nobody has expected it really. So, probably going forward, it's hopefully not as bad anymore, but still anticipate change to come faster and faster in the future. So we think it's good if you start out with what you really need, deliver on this, and then drive best practices and skills throughout your organization while you onboard your business onto the platform. And I think this is critical because onboarding while you deliver is something that we have seen really driving value for clients because your organization needs to scale out with your technical capabilities. It doesn't really help you if you deploy the latest in cloud-based data warehouse. You spend a lot of money for a lot of good technologies, and at the end, there's 1 or 2 reports sitting in this that you could have probably done in Excel basically by hand anyways. So we think onboarding people, making sure that everybody sees the value, and then driving the delivery of the technology step by step across your organization while you realize the initial value and then build on top of it is something that we've seen as quite a good forward step. So now that we know that a data platform allows us to integrate data across the organization and derive that value from the data that you have been collecting, and that we need to assess our status, set a business target, and plan out the path there, and what we can do to trust the cloud to help us start small and scale fast. The question is, I think that for you to basically answer, like come up with questions that you have for your business, and I'm really happy to take them going forward. So at this point, I'm handing it back to you, Tarek, and thanks for the invite. Happy to be here.
Thank you, Frank. Appreciate you giving us a journey. Can you, and may I ask a difficult question, and that is to demystify this for me and make it real for me, please. Make it as a CEO would here. A CTO would understand what you're talking about. A CIO will enjoy it. A CEO will probably fall off his chair. Can you guide me through what an average family head of a family business or a young retail firm or somebody who has, I don't know, 10 10 branches of a fitness center or something like that, the really the heart and soul of an economy. And if you could unshare that so we can sort of see you also. But what is the conversation that is happening with them, Frank? And I think that to me is really the key. What's that journey? Because and then behind that journey, this layer, I totally understand. So I need to find a way to demystify that. So quick question on that, and then we go to Christoph.
Yeah, sure. So what I was trying to show here is that, you need to understand that, first of all, you need data that you need to collect, right? Because if you don't have the data, you don't have the insights. Now, once you have the data, the question is, where do you put it? Do you store it in your Excel files where basically everybody types it in, right? And then you integrate these Excel flows across these tables, you generate more tables that read from other tables, and it can become cumbersome, right? If you want to analyze something, and you don't have integrated data that you can trust because you have no way to understand how it was ingested, so written into the files initially, collected, then it's hard for people to trust the data. So whatever you want to make decisions around how to drive your business based on the insights that you've gathered from your data, then people need to move fast. So that's not the right time to make sure that you go back and you check that the data that you collected is actually valid. Now, what you want to do there is to actually move that data, not only how you collect it, but then also how you store it and how you process it into an environment that can scale with you. So we're talking about retail as an example, right? You might be interested to be able to tell your clients when they are at your desk, at your point of sale, what, based on their history, would have been a next good buy for them. If they come back over and over again and they have been purchasing from you before, it would be a good service to tell them, how new stock that has been coming fits to what they've been doing. So something that is already available in online retail, but then off-time retail, that's probably a harder thing to do. Yeah. All of that is enabled if you have the data collected and integrated in a way. And what I've showed here is basically an understanding of how the technology behind the cloud works to enable you to understand first where you are, then plan out your future work going forward, and then how to integrate it in a way. And I think that this also becomes clear if I can show you a use case later from a client of ours.
That'd be great. Thank you, Frank. I think it's really important that because I meet a lot of senior level people and boards and so on, and frankly, their eyes just glaze over when we start talking tech with them. Intellectually, they know that they need their data captured and so on. Emotionally, they need to feel that this is going to enhance my business, take me forward, give me new insights that I didn't have before, give me a market edge, give me some kind of positioning. That's my emotional connection with what you are presenting. Once I've got that, then the science and the tech can be done by you guys. I have no issues with that. But to bridge that to me, as a business person, is one of the most important big leaps forward that we actually need to take. And companies are not doing that enough. One quick data point, a new Forrester report came out that the Fortune 1000 companies only now, as of 1st of January, only 21% of them are now digitized. So 80% are still not. And that's the Fortune 1000 companies. So this is how far behind the curve even larger companies are, let alone the SMBs. So I think that cultural gap, the data gap of an emotional connection with this shift is very critical. So I think we'll get deeper into that as the Q&A starts. Christoph, could you kindly give us a quick context from yourself, and then let's just get deep into the conversations, and then you'll come back to your use cases and so on.
Yes, thank you, Tariq. Thank you, Frank and Lawrence. So today will be, first let me introduce myself. I'm the CEO of Exquitech, a company born in the cloud since 2011, focusing on data modernization and Microsoft Cloud Services. So today we will be discussing quickly and briefly the correlation between the modern applications and whether it's under Microsoft or third-party applications with Azure and the data modernization solutions that are present there. So, and we will discuss the value of it, and we have some use cases, as you mentioned. If we will have time at the end to go over them, practical use cases that we have done, and we made use of all those benefits and values that Azure is providing. So I will start first by giving a quick introduction about that. So nowadays, as you know, data modernization is being used a lot on Azure under many umbrellas, under many solutions, which we will be stating part of them in the next slide. So the value of it is that today many of the SMB sector and many of the companies starting to use a low-code system like Power Platform, which is one now of the most famous collaboration tools and a tool to be used for digitalization, forms, and workflows. So we want to state the value and the extended value that Azure Data is providing to this tool. For example, when it comes to many complex calculations that are happening in the back end, when it comes to big data being centralized and being integrated with many systems, whether under Microsoft or any third-party systems, we are using data modernization on Azure to collect this data under a data warehouse on Azure and under a database. And then we are performing all the calculations and the complex calculations using Azure functions and cognitive services. So the thing here that just to give a quick intro about those solutions, since we use them a lot, and nowadays it's being used to collaborate this data. So Azure, basically Azure Data Factory is being used to process and to use the ETL process to capture data among many systems, to centralize them into one data warehouse, and then to start doing the analysis or to use them into Power Platform or Dynamics or any other systems that companies are using. The other part is the Azure Cognitive Services that is being used for AI and for analysis, especially also when it comes to facial recognition and modern services used nowadays. We are using Azure Cognitive Services, which we will mention how it's being used in some use cases. Azure Functions and APIs are being used to connect with several sources to capture this data and to place it within Azure Data Warehouse or Azure Synapses. And then after that, this data, definitely we are using it for many added value solutions and analytics for those companies. Now, just also to highlight the value of Power Platform and Azure Data Warehouse and data modernization. The thing is that now Azure sits in the middle of all those solutions that SMBs are working on. You know that nowadays many systems are there. We might be using a human resource system, which is different than our CRM system, which is different than our ERP system. So we are using the data modernization to just correlate and collaborate among all those systems into one place to make use of this data, you know, that today data is there's a big value for data, and many of us and many companies are not using those data to the most of it and to get some nice analytics and forecasting on their business. So with this data modernization, we are able to capture from any source. There's always a way to capture using different functions, different solutions present on Azure, to take those data and take them to the next level, which is the analysis and the systems. So this is basically what I needed to highlight, especially when it comes to data analysis under Power BI or even other big vendors in the market. We can make use of this data to visualize them into very nice dashboards and very user-friendly dashboards that anyone are able to read them and to understand them. So this is in brief, quickly, what I needed to highlight about data modernization and Azure and how we are able to use it with the modern low-code system, as we say, like Power Apps and other systems. So happy later on to tackle any question that might pop up, and even to discuss about some use cases where we used data modernization and we used cognitive services. So this is in brief, Tariq. So I'll hand it over back to you. And,
thank you, Chris.
Yes.
Thanks, Christoph. Appreciate that. You've given us a very sort of in-depth understanding and analysis of Azure and your modernization platform. So thank you for that. Now, let's dive into the conversation, into the basic engagement. Frank, may I please start with you? Talking about, doing data as a service, trying to find the whole philosophy of how we can accelerate and simplify to make sure that people start coming on board.
From our experience, it's the most important thing to make sure that the business case drives the development towards the cloud. But if you look at data, a lot of companies have been ongoingly collecting information. But you know that collecting information, if it's not from an automated system that just provides data to you, like, for example, if you have a web page and you collect click streams, right? You might just do this. It's an offload. It really, set it once up, and you hope to understand what your people are doing in real time on your web presence. That's one thing. It's easy to do. It just costs you money to store, but that's pretty simple and cost efficient. But if you actually have to invest human power to generate data by collecting it in some kind of a manual process, then of course you really want to make sure that you collect data that's relevant. So we always advocate, start out with understanding your business problems and how data can relate to that. And there's tons of tools, around Azure, around AWS, all the other providers. There's a plethora of tools that you could use to implement it technically, but they will not really help you to deliver the return on your investment into the technology if you don't have that concrete foundation of the business problem.
Sure. So do you have any example of a use case that you have worked on, ideally in the UAE, that would sort of demonstrate to us what you're talking about?
Sure, I can give you one specifically. I mean, I've two prepared, but I think that they're a bit too big in terms of size. But one smaller one was from Lebanon in this case. It's a EMEA regional provider for market information around Arabic markets. They've been going through many years of data collection and extraction from business reports around fortunate companies in the region and extracting those into Excel tables. They have a very bespoke Excel table workflow where they combine Excel tables on multiple levels to generate reports that are then internally used by the reporting team to generate the content for the magazine. And now they've been looking at ways to actually automate this. Now, they were already a user of Azure. So we implemented an Azure POC with them, showcasing how they can keep the ingestion process in Excel. So basically, do not change anything for the people ingesting the data because they're low cost, they're well trained, right? You don't want to mess with this. But what you want to do is you want to provide the established power of using SQL in a database instead of running everything manually in functions in Excel workflows, right? Because Excel is beautiful as long as one person or multiple people that have close contact with each other can work on these. But once you really want to like dive into more productionized workflows where some people enter it, some other people analyze it, it's more easy to actually put that workload into a database and then drive queries against that database that give you, using SQL language, a very declarative way of analyzing that data and then pushing it into Power BI, where it can easily be digested and analyzed and visualized in a good way. So this was something that we helped them understood initially with a couple of workshops around understanding their current workflows, identifying pain points that they currently have, and then specifically touching on the most low-cost option around Power Automate to actually automate the ingest from Excel into the database, and then using SQL queries written in Power BI, reading the data from that database as a central store. And this way, we help them bring on the whole legacy of historical data that they have been heavily collecting over the last 25, 30 years as an asset that is now also available. And that's the interesting thing. Going the next step in phase 2 with this project, that's not only internal, but also customer facing, where they want to make this available, that data available as insights in embedded Power BI dashboards in behind a paywall, so that people can come in, they can actually purchase the data, so that they can use the historical analysis and the work that they've done to build a second revenue stream. So I think this is a really exciting project.
Excellent. Lawrence, may I come to you, please? You put a nice question in there. What is your biggest challenge when it comes to data modernization so far? Can you answer that sort of rhetorical question that you put out there, which is so important, in the context of what is open source? And what does it actually mean? Because we've been talking about a lot of products, which is fine, but what is open source and what does it actually mean? Whenever I say open source, my hand almost naturally goes like this. So, so I'm praying for something. So tell me, how does it work and in this context?
Okay, perfect. So open source technology, and I'll use it as a technology paradigm. Open source technology ideally is technology that is built by community, meaning it is open to contribution. And so you have pieces of software out there that are built by a core developer. So let's say Lawrence comes up, puts something together, but then it is open to other developers to come in and also add their code and make it better. And the good thing is open source technology is all around us. For example, most of the software that's running on your TV is open source. If you're using an Android device, Android, the operating system, originally was open source and still is open source. And the beautiful thing with open source software is it ends up being more secure because it is open, people can see the code that's there, but it also ends up receiving a lot of features that can cover a wide base of use cases. Why? Because you have developers from all over the world with different ideas for what they want that piece of software to be, actually coming back in and contributing to it. Which is why, for me, open source software is so, it's amazing, it's beautiful.
So where do you make the money? Where do you make the money?
Okay, so where do you make money from open source? That's actually a very good question. There are two ways. I'll point it from the Microsoft side and how you can make money as an organization. So we do have organizations out there that provide support for open source technology. A very, very good example is Red Hat. Red Hat provides enterprise support for Red Hat Enterprise, so Linux Enterprise. So they literally take Linux, they add some enterprise features to it, and then they make money by providing support and licenses to go in and support that. Number two is, depending on the license, which allows you to use that open source software, you can actually add your own features and resell. And this is true for very many pieces of software. It's how a lot of organizations make money from a base free app, go in, add features, and resell it. But why is this important in data modernization? So the two most popular open source databases are MySQL and Postgres. And it doesn't really matter if you know them or not, but The thing is, they are some of the most widely used databases across the board. Any WordPress website, actually, I'd say at least 90% of WordPress websites run on MySQL, and it's a very powerful database. It doesn't have all the features that you'd get on an enterprise database, like, let's say, Oracle or SQL Server or et cetera, but it's very open. It's easy to get into. There's a low bar of entry. And so what we found is most small and medium businesses actually go in and use this software. Why? Because in most cases, open source software is also free to use, which means there's a low bar of entry for you as an organization. Now, why would Microsoft, a company that's, of course, looking to make money, worry about open source software? The thing is, open source software also needs management. And so if you have 10 MySQL databases seated across your entire architecture, it does get a bit problematic to go in and manage them. Number two is you might need optimization, or even better yet, and I love the example Frank has given, is integration. And I think also Christoph has talked a bit about that. How do you get all your data to appear on one place? And this is where Microsoft and Azure come in, is we try and ensure that one, you're getting the power of open source that I love, and hopefully you love as well. But also number two is you're able to manage it and integrate it, and that way stay cost effective. Yeah, so that's the long answer.
Thank you very much. I'm totally convinced. So I'm going to have a quick follow-up question with you, but then open this question to both Christoph and Frank also. What I've seen when I go to teams out there, the SMBs out there, they're saying, well, what I've got today, just don't touch that and build something on the side and then migrate it. In other words, don't mess with what I've got because I've built a $100 million business with my current stuff. And now what you're going to say is I can optimize, I can save costs, I can future-proof you, I can build on the future, all of those elements. Those are the things you're selling. So how does this two-step process happen? Quick response from you, and I'll go to Christoph for a quick response, and then Frank, and then we can pull this thing together as one of the key drivers of this conversation.
Yes, thank you, Tariq. So yeah, I want to first, Lawrence, thank you for the open source. You convinced me. I wasn't a fan of an open source, so you're very good at convincing people for the open source. So we'll definitely look into it. I will start by Tariq telling you about because also I saw a question from Mariam about the ease of use and asking about what are the major repercussions for companies who are not ready to implement this today. So my answer for you and for Mariam is that the beauty of the data modernization in Azure is also in its simplicity. So it's very, very simple now with the tools that we have in hand to implement this. It's very easy to implement through Power Platform, through Power Automate, through Azure Data Factory, to make use of this data, integrate systems among each other, especially when we talk about Power Automate, where we can create a workflow. Any person, even not necessarily a developer or a technical person, can just go and through a very easy user interface build his own process, get data from a certain system, and then just pull it and centralize it within Azure SQL or Azure Postgre or any other source. If we go also for data analysis, where companies, you're saying that companies have maybe invested a lot of money in many systems and they don't want to touch that. Yes, they don't want to touch that, but they want to understand what's happening behind those systems. Those data that they were kind of collecting for the last years, they want to understand and to forecast and to make use of that. So nowadays with tools like Power BI, with many other tools, you can just create your own report. They call them self-service BI system, where you can just come, collect the data from SQL, from Azure, and just create your own dashboards. So it's very easy to use. It's very simple to use. And this is the beauty of it. This is in brief to answer your question and Mariam's question.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Frank, may I go to you on this one? I have a $100 million business, and it's working. I've got some basic structures and so on. I have my CRM, I have my databases running and so on. But you walk in and sort of say, I can modernize this. So my simple response would be, love to. I think your ideas are great. You'll do a little workshop. You'll show the business case. But how do we run that parallel structure? What do we need to do to give me, as a CEO, comfort that this transition, this migration, this process is fundamentally going to help me and change my business?
Sure. I mean, thank you very much for that question, because I think it's a very important question. And I mean, everybody can rest assured, because the process that is behind this has worked for trillion-dollar companies as well, going to the cloud, right? So it's standardized, there's tooling around it. It's basically mainly foolproof. And so what we can tackle there is mainly a decision of what we want to re-architect, what we just want to re-platform, what we want to just migrate, right? Or what we want to replace in the process. There's actually 5 R's that we're talking about in terms of data migration. But the most important decision here is, are there some things that you feel are hindering your process going forward? And are there things that you feel so comfortable and so, cozy with that you really don't want to let them go at this point? And both of that is fine, right? There can be a solution for them. For the cozy elements, you just want to keep them. So, if we're talking about just replacing something that you're doing right now with something that you can do on the cloud, then you can just re-platform or migrate it. You just take it, put it on the cloud, keep it there, keep it working as is. Don't change the process, just change where it lives. And the other things where you feel, okay, this process has been growing, it's kind of cumbersome, people are not so used to it anymore because it's more of a headache that people need to work around, then probably that's a good time to start thinking about re-architecting it, meaning making it better using the tools that you have on the cloud natively for you. So what we've seen and what we've done ourselves is there's huge organizations with real big estates, right, that want to go to the cloud fast. They want to have a quick cutoff with zero downtime, basically with millions of customers. And that works because Azure, for example, provides a lot of tools to analyze an existing database and use it and then migrate it to the cloud so that you can run the same database as is in the cloud, and you just change a little bit of configuration and it works out of the box as you're used to. And then there's Power Automate, there's other offerings, there's specific cloud-based native services that we call managed services that reduce complexity from what you've been doing before. So when you had a team that actually needed to manage it, then you can put it on the cloud and let Azure do the work for you.
Thank you for that. Now, a statistic, a data point that I constantly refer to is around 70 to 75% of all transformation processes fail to fulfill their objectives, 75%. Now, they're not failing because the product is bad. They're not failing because the technology isn't there. They're failing because the cultural shift hasn't happened. They're failing because the business case isn't clear. They're failing because people are just not ready for change. Those are the reasons for that resistance. The internal immune system of an organization clicks in, and then it literally stops that shift going on. So this question is both to you, Frank, and to you, Lawrence. Perhaps you can comment on it first. Is what kind of engagement do you do? What kind of counseling and coaching do you do? What kind of training do you do for ensuring that this thing succeeds? Not because of the high quality product you have, which we do, we accept that, but to redefine the culture and redefine the acceptance and the absorption of that system.
Thank you, Tariq. That's actually a big question, and it's something we face at Microsoft all the time. So this is universal, and I'll give a very good example, and allow me to use this example and build on it. Back in the day, for those of you who are using Office 365, there was Skype for Business, which used to be Link, and then one day, an email goes out to the entire organization saying, you now have to use Teams. 300,000 people have to shift their entire way of working so that we can now use this new piece of technology. And this is the part, this is exactly what happens in organizations, is there will be an immediate shift. However, this is the one thing we've become good at Microsoft, and it's something I'd love to share, is I believe in, I'm a big proponent of the ADKAR model of change, because it is change management. So it's basically, and I hope I get this right, it's awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. So one is you have to drive the awareness, make sure people are aware that this change is happening and it's happening for this reason. Especially if it is an executive decision, that needs to be done very well. The second is desire, is you have to drive that desire. Do people want this change to happen? Have those team meetings, talk to people, talk to the teams, make sure they understand, hey, we are now putting in Power BI because we want you to have simpler dashboards. Do you want simpler dashboards? The answer is always going to be yes, which now comes to the hard part. Knowledge, upskilling, getting people to go in, mess around with the technology, play with it, try and get them using it. And if possible, this is actually usually the longest part of the engagement, is driving that knowledge and then ensuring they have the ability to go in and use it. So it might be, for example, whenever you're having an executive meeting, you want to see the Power BI dashboard. It's a simple. Now that ties to the last point, which is reinforcement, is making sure people go back to using it. It is a process. There is no dodging that. Change management, they are literally professionals who spend their entire time doing change management. It is hard, but I love the ADKAR model because it makes it very clear as to what you need to do and how you do it. So that's how I'd look at it.
That's good. I've just put the ADKAR model there. Can you just put the five elements there on the chat so we have them handy? Frank, now I'm requesting you to put on your psychology hat, and that is the immune system of an organization. I mean, let me give you an example. If you want your kidney replaced, the first thing the doctor will give you is immunosuppressants. And basically, first to suppress that, and then you have the opportunity to put the kidney in, and then it has half a chance to succeed. Companies are exactly like that. They are living organisms. So we need to give those immunosuppressants, and those immunosuppressants could be training, could be coaching, could be workshops, could be whatever, to get people to create that desire. I love the word desire because I think we need to want it before we can actually absorb it. And so in that way, what are the psychological barriers that you are seeing in organizations, Frank, which become a hindrance and a filter through which you have to work?
Sure. I mean, I think that Lawrence already put this very nicely with the ADKAR model. So I would also like to build up on that idea. So if we're saying that there's an awareness step, right? There's a question why? Because psychologically, we're talking about changing something that you already see value in, right? You have invested into it. I have so many people that I met that have invested heavily into their Excel sheets. They love them, right? They love how an Excel sheet can just customize everything for them. They don't want to move away from this. They feel that over years they have fought for it. So there's a heavy investment from people into the solution that they have created, because we can assume for everyone that they always want to do the best in their job for themselves and for the organizations. So I think the most important thing is that if we want to introduce change, then we should see everybody already in the organization as partners of that change, as key stakeholders for it, and as supporters, because there cannot be an organization without the people, right? So everything, and you say, like they always say, right, culture eats strategies for breakfast.
Yes.
So at the end, whatever you think up on the top of the organization, if people are not accustomed to it, they don't like it, they don't understand why, they don't see the value in it, they're surely not going to follow it. And if you have to move your people towards them actively, that's probably not a good idea in the first place. Right. Because, so what I would advocate for always, and what I'm trying to do also at Crayon, as a solution architect in the beginning of every technical project, is to make sure that we start this project with a good mindset. And that mindset is, We have people in the organization doing their best right now, and we want to empower those people to do better. We want to reduce their efforts, right, and make it less painful for them to get to that point where they want to come. And only then, if we understand what those pain points for the organization are, then we should step in and make a decision on how to change it.
Yeah, thank you, Frank. At the moment, I'm in the middle of, as a team, we are working on a transformation process. We call it transformation as a service. And that process, we start with mindset shift and getting people ready. We are literally in month one, so it will take time to build on that. But it's quite relevant, this conversation for them, because they're going through all of this, these stages that we have spoken about today. So I'm a live use case right now. So I'm working on it. So I have a very nice question from Rahul. How do you think SMEs who are not technologically savvy, which is in my addition, most of them, and don't really have the team to supervise it, take care of these data and processes? Imagine a business owner who is just starting to understand how social media works. How can they even imagine or think about implementing this? A quick response from you, Lawrence, first. And then I will go to you, Christoph, to give us maybe a use case where you went through and explaining to them is that maybe you're not technically savvy, but this is how you took them through the process. Lawrence, to you.
Okay, that's a tough question, especially from and I think I am very ill prepared to answer it because I'm a techie, and so I jump straight to the tech. But I'll give my idea, and I think Christoph will definitely share a very good answer for this. I think firstly is understanding your needs and your requirements. That is the most important part. And this doesn't have to be in a technical way. It could be simply saying, I want to do X or Y faster. So I want to see my business data faster. I want to be able to use an app to do X, Y, Z. So being able to define that will make it easier for you to know, hey, this is the technology I want. So that allows you to figure out your scope. And then the second part, which allows me to hand over to Christoph, is to look for an expert in the space to actually come in and guide and share what that need and that requirement would translate into. And most importantly is also gaining, if you have an internal expert, which may not always be the case, is of course getting them on the case and having them look at your business and try and define that. If not, external expertise always helps. So Christoph, allow me to
And before you go,
over
Christoph, it's a very nice segue. I've just received a message from one of our friends and colleague who is a leading data scientist and AI specialist. Her name is Dr. Naveen Haj. Naveen, can you please come on board? Karan, if you can spotlight Naveen. Hi, Naveen.
Hi, how are you?
Welcome. We thought you would be, the cameo that comes into movies and things like that.
No.
The subject matter expert dives in and helps out a little bit. So, Dr. Naveen, can you please share with us your thoughts on this? Because I know you must be coming across people whose knowledge levels are not very high. What are your thoughts as a data scientist and as an AI expert? Because now we're cross-fertilizing that.
Yeah, so let me just make a few comments before I jump in. Also, gathering the thoughts of what all the people have said so far, because there have been a lot of very interesting insights throughout. But to put it in simple words, and then I think in many ways, this has been said over and over again, it starts with the business need, right? So when you start by a data platform assessment, like Frank has mentioned, you're looking at what kind of use cases are you trying to resolve by building a data platform. When you're talking about modernizing, when you're talking about combining open source solutions or using any of the technologies that are out there, it's all driven by a business need. And there are very simple questions that every single organization asks. And regardless which industry you are in, these are questions that you always have to keep asking yourselves. Otherwise, you're going to be out of the game. So you could be looking at, either improving your own processes, and for that matter, you need to be looking at how things are happening. So you need to have insights into what is happening internally, or you could be looking at even improving, your customer experience. And for that, you want to understand the behavior of your customers. So you need to be looking at the historical transactions with the customer. Perhaps you want to be able to predict how your customer is going to behave in the future. So, or you could be even looking at transforming your products, at offering a more customized product for your customers, or even at ways you can create new products, new services. Because as we can see, all organizations today are looking at ways they can transform their business. So that journey, starts from these simple questions. And even if I am sitting in an organization that is not necessarily tech oriented, that does not have a department that is dedicated for technology, or that is relying on external parties, on vendors to drive technical challenges, it always starts with you as a business and your vision for the next 3, 5, 10 years, perhaps. And that's where you start by identifying really how you're going to go. Once you identify the needs, then you can start by identifying the solutions, because the solutions are there to serve a specific purpose. So, you could be working with, because experts are sitting everywhere. You could be working with vendors, you could be working with partners, you could be working on building internal capabilities. That is the easy part. The tough questions to ask are, what impact is this going to have on me as a business? What kind of ROI do I expect from this? What sort of pain do I have to go through? Because again, culture, training, knowledge, getting people to accept that things are not going to operate the same way they were operating for the past decade. And, and in simple words, I don't think of it as immunosuppressants. I think of it as evolution that is fast tracked. As a human race, we would not have been able to survive to this point without evolution. And the same is going to happen with businesses.
Okay, super. Do you want to make a quick comment, Christoph? And then I have a bigger, broader question, which I think everybody can jump on. Please.
Yes, Tariq, I would like just to take a few minutes to discuss this topic, and we have like 3 quick use cases that I want to discuss and show in 1 minute after that with the help of our senior consultant on a solution, how easy it is to convert whatever people think is complex, how we made a solution very easy for frontline workers, for retail workers, just to go and gather data using a simple phrase or a simple question on Microsoft Teams. But before I jump to that, I would like to discuss 4 challenges that SMBs and especially companies that doesn't have lots of IT resources faces and asks. It's always a challenge, the time, the cost, the performance, and the complexity of the application. So all those 4 challenges can be tackled with the ease of use that we discussed before of the modern applications that Microsoft are presenting, like the low-code applications used in Power Platform, and the back-end complex and advanced things that can be done using Azure Data Modernization. So I'm going to discuss a case that we tackled in Saudi Arabia, which was a big challenge when it comes to the integration with the government called Zakat, where they needed to integrate each and every transaction, invoice, receipt, credit note, everything that is happening with their ERP system with the government. So we've used here Azure Data Warehouse to capture data from any ERP system to generate a QR code on the invoices using Azure functions, and then to distribute those invoices from Azure to the government from a centralized environment from different sources to one source, which is the government and the Zakat platform. So this is a large use case that we've implemented using data modernization on Azure. The second part, which I will pass it to Julian, he will show you a virtual agent that was created that is fetching data and is responding through, we're talking about millions of records sitting on Azure, and how easy we can make and how simple we can make the application to avoid complexity. So Julian, please, if you can just show quickly the virtual agent in like
Could you make
maximum
it
2 minutes.
brief, Julian, so that we get the figure and then we get everybody else involved?
Yeah, sure. So hello, everyone. My name is Julian Anid. I am the Senior Power Platform Solution Architect at Exquitec. So now we are going to see a use case in a retail industry. So since we still have 2 minutes, I will quickly walk you through the indispensability of the Power Virtual Agent.
Julian, we can't hear you.
I think he's frozen. We'll come back to Julian. In the meantime, let me ask my big question while Dr. Nadine is still here, and also to Frank, and then we'll come back to Julian after we do that. My view of the world, Frank, is that anything that can be digitized and can be put in will be digitized, and everything is going to go there. So all my data sources are there. But anything that cannot be digitized, like love and humanity and empathy and touch and human, all of those key elements. And in terms of all of those factors, the judgment factor, the customer experience factor, the sensing factor, all of those things need to come to us, back to us as human beings. So the baseline is there, and then all of the customer experience elements are on top, using AI, using various cognitive issues and so on. Can you comment on how that's going to affect our user experiences in the future, and how is it going to impact our business and the bottom line? Both you and Dr. Nadine perhaps could answer those questions. First, you, Frank.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Tariq. I mean, I think we're already experiencing that anyway. We're now living in basically real-time, 24-hour connected global society that we didn't have 15 years ago. I mean, thinking about that, the iPhone came out in 2008, I think. It's been like a steep trajectory from there on. And now, obviously, nobody is living in a fully offline world anymore. But what we see is that traditional offerings that are mainly offline businesses and the online versions of themselves, like take Amazon for retail, right? They're now discharging in totally different directions, because in terms of stack availability, in terms of delivery, in terms of customer support, availability of like changing, like the way that a company can react to my needs as a user, right? And we see that digitized companies just have a much better service perception also from the users directly. And I think that it's time right now to think about how we can utilize the digital technologies that we have available to enhance the personal experience and relation that we have with our clients. Because specifically, if we're trying to go as an offline business or a semi-offline business against incompetence in the same area, like Amazon, we see that in retail. I mean, what do you do, right? How do you compete with them? How do you compete with them in terms of price? Do you compete with them in terms of customer relation? I mean, what does that even mean, right? I still, as a customer, have to go there physically. Yeah. Making that an experience in itself, I think, is something that is enabled through technology. So what I always advocate for is stay up to date with what is available around cognitive services and AI already. Because a lot of capabilities that are redundant grunt work that we still consider human can already be automated for good fashion. And then there's a lot of things that people associate with AI, and that they're afraid of, that are far-fetched from where we currently are. So there's no cognitive systems around that can learn by themselves and get smarter and ingest everything from the internet and then become a superhuman power source. But we can utilize specific services around understanding images and video, understanding technology in terms of text. All of that is available and it's standard, right? So, yeah. For example, starting with sentiment. How do people feel about our services and products when they're online from an offline experience? Yeah. Just understanding that really, it's a game changer.
Absolutely. No, I really appreciate that insight. Dr. Naveen, we will let you go, but please could you answer this thing, because I know you work for a facial recognition company and how that was being utilized for recruiting. So that's a nice value add component for a small mid-sized company. You're working in the auto sector, experience use cases there. How are you using all of these human elements just because you've got a high quality, solid data platform? Can you please quickly comment on that?
Yeah, so I think it starts from the user behavior, and that has changed a lot in the past few years. With the digitization, era that we have experienced. We're not necessarily digitally native users, but the generations that are coming after us are born into it. So what they demand from their products, from the tools that they work with, is quite staggering in terms of the frequency of the interactions with the product, in terms of the quality of the services that this product is going to present to them. So simple things like, I want to be able to get real-time reports on what is happening, let's say, inside my service center as a being an automotive retailer, for example. I want to be able to see how my customers are behaving within my showroom, and which customers are going to potentially buy a car, as an example. So these kind of questions used to take weeks and months of analyzing Excel files to come up with answers, so that I can, as a business owner, put up a strategy on which salesperson do I need to put in and which time, and which type of sales pitch do I need to put in with which type of customers, or what kind of upselling product can I suggest for a customer that is coming in to buy, for example, a BMW Series 7 versus something else. Now all of these questions now need to be answered almost instantaneously, because businesses need to be able to take actions also instantaneously. Without data platforms, without automation, without digitization, none of these would be possible. So these types of insights, these types of actions and actionable insights, and we're not talking just about insights, but insights that you can take actions and decisions from, that generate immediate feedback, immediate ROI, immediate interaction with the customer, because that means customer experience, that means better processes, that means better products. So overall, your entire business gets transformed, and all aspects of your business are getting touched just by having the underlying technology that enables you to do all of these. These are things that were not possible 10, 15 years ago. And if I look forward in the next 5, 10 years, and it's going to become even faster because it's moving at an exponential pace, then all of these questions are become even more and more complex. And our demands as users from technology, from products, from solutions are going to become even more and more complex.
Great. Dr. Nadine, thank you very much for stepping out from your work and coming and gracing us with your presence and with your insights. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
For having me.
I'd also now like to request Francisco to join us, please, Francisco, because he is the lead here in Dubai for the region, and he's going to be talking to us about some of the product range that we have. But before we go into that, and before we go back to Emmanuel, because I think we're at that stage of the session where we're going into the product solutions and so on. A final word from Frank, because he needs to step out also. Frank, what is your advice to the average mid-sized CEO, family company, etc., and where do you think is the starting point for them as we go forward?
Yeah, thanks. So I think from our experience, the digital journey is something that has been revolutionized by cloud in a way that takes away from pre-planning towards fast reaction. So don't be afraid, get started, and get started today, because the cloud can offer you an optimization potential at every step of the way. It doesn't matter where you are, right? And it grows with you while it actually supports your transformation also internally. So what I would suggest for everybody that is thinking about having a use case tested out is that, first of all, talk to your representative here, use Microsoft. Microsoft is always happy to support any kind of engagement in this. You have already the link towards enabling a free assessment for you. I would definitely make use of that. Get to talk to somebody who knows the business, right? You can be us, can be anybody else. I'm happy to talk to you. I mean, you can just look me up here. And I think that Tariq will also share my contact details anyway. We are always happy to support everybody going forward. But from your personal perspective as a company owner, as a technical lead, as an engagement seeker at this point, I would suggest look at whatever people have done that are comparable to you. Do a research on the competition out there and see where your industry really is. Because as Tariq also mentioned so nicely in the beginning on the slides, if you think back to that, it could be that you're in a highly congested, very technically advanced business, or you might be in a total lagger area. And if you're in a lagger area, don't be afraid. Don't look at Amazon and think, oh my God, I have to implement something like them, right? Start slow, start small, do something that's valuable. And I would typically try to reduce costs in terms of efforts. This is also where AI started many years ago when Google did it, before Google was like, at a point where everybody thought Google has already search based on AI. What they actually had was search based on patterns, but they had cooling systems based on AI. And this is what really drove their return on investment, right? Nobody's thinking about this, but this is where their pain point was, because Google drives energy consumption. That's their main thing that they need to pay for. And then, so the question to you is, what's your main cost? And how can technology help you solve this?
Super. Frank, thank you very much indeed for you to take your time and with your insights. You're a great partner for Microsoft and a great thought leader. Thank you very much indeed. Really
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Julien, back to you.
Yes.
Your internet exploded.
Apologize.
No worries.
For the
No worries.
connection.
Over to you.
Yes,
quickly give us your demo, and then Francisco will also help us to guide us through with Lawrence. Please.
Great. So I will start by sharing my screen, and quickly I will explain the use case that we're using in the Power Virtual Agent. So as I mentioned, Power Virtual Agent will allow us to create any chatbot. It will answer the questions. Also, it already has the set of intelligent APIs and SDKs that can help us to extend with Azure Cognitive Services to build our custom AI models. And these enable us to easily add more intelligent features to our chatbot by using Azure Cognitive Services. In addition to that, also, we went beyond this. So we used Azure Bot Framework and Azure Bot Services. And all of these data is centralized in a data warehouse in Azure SQL. So this chatbot is in real time is connected to this data that will help any employee to answer any questions. And taking the example of a retail industry, like imagine in a store you have plenty of shirts, and a client has asked you that he needs the list of all the items that are colored in blue, size medium. So this chatbot will return the list of the items that are available in the store. And even if they are not available in the stores, it will show the different branches where these items are available. And this is in real time through the ETL process, through all the data that is in Azure SQL. So I will quickly show you how I'm communicating with this chatbot and how the data is returned with images. In addition, we are using Azure Blob Storage to store the images, and this is connected directly. The path of the images is connected to Azure data. So simply, I will say hi to the chatbot. So he will reply to me. I will say that I need to check the scope variance. So he will ask me if I have a reference number for that. So I will say no. If I have the reference number, I can directly input the number, and he will return for me the item that I want. So he will ask me about the item type. So let's say I want all the jackets that are colored in red, that have the size medium. So you see, in real time, I'm communicating with this chatbot. So now in just few moments, we'll go ahead, query this data in Azure SQL. Is very smart enough. He will return for me the images and the details. And this is in real time from the database. So imagine So this is a very simple use case. So whether I'm on Teams, I'm using my mobile device, I'm at in the airport, so I can communicate with this chatbot directly, is live with the data, and he will return whatever I want. So this is a very simple use case that we used and where we extended the Azure services.
Yeah.
So that's it from my end.
Thanks, Julian. That's very useful because it makes it real. It makes it more relatable.
Yes.
Otherwise, we can only talk about stuff. This makes it relatable.
It will allow to engage the team member together, and so it's a collaborating tool, and it will help any business industry to increase the employees' productivity. So it's a low-code solution. That's the benefit.
Thank you very much. No, appreciate that. Francisco, we'd like your thoughts and comments on this conversation and how you feel we are now connecting the dots with Christoph and his analysis and work. Lawrence spoke to us about an open source. You are one of the leads on cloud. How do you see all of these things coming together? Any thoughts, any comments?
Well, thank you so much, Tarek. I'll do just a very quick intro for myself, for the audience. Basically, I'm responsible for UAE, what we call small medium enterprises, responsible, for the segment. And regarding today's conversation, I think it's very clear. I mean, data is the new oil and fuel of tomorrow, right? For ITs and companies they're going to be powered on data, because at the end of the day, I mean, it's something that we need to invest today and don't let it be for tomorrow. I think it's the reality of today. And we have looked at very different angles from either approaching it from the open source, either approaching it from low code application. At the end, the center of every new application is the data. Okay, now I think that everyone might see a challenge of where do I start, right? I mean, how we can start getting this journey, and I mean, it's not simple, and that's why, I mean, me as responsible for UAE, we have a very broad team, I mean, with different ways of helping into identifying those simple use cases like Christoph or Julien were presenting, and we have this type of solution assessment that can identify, the simple baby steps that can help on either reducing costs, either automating, part of the processes of managing new databases, either adopting new open source technologies that could simplify the way of launching new applications. We are here to help. So please make use of all these resources that Microsoft is putting at your disposal to start this journey. I think on the chat there has been multiple links shared that you can sign up for these free solution assessments. We're here to help, and thank you so much for everyone that has attended the session today. It was a fantastic conversation.
Thank you, Francisco. I'm too tempted to make a political comment, which you will allow me. You said data is the new oil. Actually, these days, oil is at $140. It's actually very valuable. So it's going nuts, and it's going to get worse. So data. So we have to increase the value of data. Now, I'm just it's a topical comment, so I thought I'd just throw that in for fun. No, you're absolutely right. I think everybody was violently agreeing with each other today, which is also fine. But that's why I was throwing in some elements on the behavior side and the starting side and so on. I think just to end this is that obviously we have a free assessment. Christoph and his team is also going to support us on that. I think it's really important to have a starting point. And what this platform and this forum is giving to us is a starting point. It is to demystify the complexities, to go through an assessment, to go through a process with the teams that are here, and then be able to take it forward. So that would be my quick comment. Final 1 minute conclusion from you, Christoph, what you would like to say, and then we start with Lawrence, so we will end with him. Please, Christoph.
Yes, thank you, Tarek. I just want to say that before, when we used to hear about data and AI, the first perception is that it's something expensive, it's something that we cannot implement. So especially when it comes to SMB sector. Now I just want to tell everyone that there is a solution for everyone now. There's a solution that can meet any size, any budget. So there's no more constraint on the size of the company that needs to implement data modernization. So this is a very quick conclusion. There is really a solution for everyone with very low budget and very, if we want to say it like easy, a very nice user interface that is not complex and can meet any business. So this is in brief.
That's
And thank you for hosting me today, Tariq. Thank you, Lawrence. Thank you, Francisco. It was a really interesting and nice session. So thanks a lot.
Very much, Christoph. I think it's a wonderful way to end your comment, is that it is now accessible to everyone, and no company is too small or too big to be able to utilize that and compete. So it's actually democratization of business and of competition. And I find that very close to my heart, that any company can now compete with the biggest out there because we have the facilities of the cloud and all of the other facilities that we looked at to get us to that particular point. Lawrence, my open source man, tell us and help us go on the road.
Okay, so I won't repeat everything that has been said. So allow me to end this with a stupid short story. In Kenya, there's something called the Elephant Highway, where elephants leave the Aberdares and travel to Mount Kenya about twice a year. And I grew up near the Elephant Highway. And there are three things you learn about elephants very, very early. Number one is elephants love sugarcane. So don't plant sugarcane near there. They will camp in your farm. Two is elephants love watermelon. Oh my goodness. They literally will camp at your farm. And three, don't ask me how I know this, but elephant meat is tough. So when we say don't try and eat the whole elephant, trust you me, we mean it. So as you start your data journey, don't try and eat the whole elephant, because I've tried, you can't. It is tough meat. So please use the solution assessment link that's been provided. Reach out to Christoph, reach out to Tariq. The resources are all there. And I wish you all the best in this data journey. And again, it's change management. You'll slowly adapt as an organization. And I'd like to say a big thank you for attending this, and a big thank you to Tariq and team for having us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lawrence, for the wonderful story that you ended with. I thank all the people who attended, Francisco, who supported us all the way through, Christoph, who's working there. And I think one of the important takeaways for me now, on the same amusing note, is we have to be careful with our melons and our sugarcane. So we have to make sure that we don't throw too much at people, so that they are able to absorb everything that we have to offer. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen who have attended, and all the best. We'll see you soon. All the best.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
Bye-bye.
Yes, bye.